Hello and welcome back to another video. Today giving my thoughts on the recent Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown demo, now that it's come to an end. The demo was available for a little while, however I myself only had a limited chance to play, still though managing just over 13 hours playtime and reaching the maximum level available. Before we begin though, do be aware that this is not the final version of the game, so certain things will change and improve, but hopefully this gives us an idea of kind of what the fundamental game is like. I am though purely giving my thoughts on the demo of the game at this stage in its development. Let's start by covering the campaign and story. The beginning of the campaign is difficult to judge because in the demo they've clearly left out a chunk of the introductory part so as not to spoil it in the final game. So the beginning throws you straight into buying a car with no real background to the story or a chance to choose and customize your character or anything like that. Then once you begin, it feels like kind of one race after another for a while, with no real link between them or sense that you're in a coherent series, like the Solar Crown competition in Unlimited 2. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's just a different way of doing things, and that is kind of the trend of modern games, is to not have so much of a story as they used to, now that so much has moved to online. Having said that, I did find the races a little bit repetitive, although they pay reasonably well, so you only realistically need to run each route once, but even so they all felt a bit the same. They're all different locations and routes and stuff, but it's just race after race after race. I feel like we need some other types, like speed traps, speed challenges, knockouts and so on. Maybe not all of them, or not all at once. And also some kind of side missions, like delivering cars would be a welcome addition at some point. But yeah, I'm not saying we need all of it right now or by launch. I'm just saying it's something to consider reintroducing later down the line, as it would be quite welcome, and also not necessarily all of those, just some of them at some point. Another thing that I noticed is that although the races are supposed to be mainly filled with other players and only contain AI to make up numbers, in my time with this demo, I never encountered a single other player in a race. It was only ever AI that I raced against, which is a shame. Unlike the previous titles in the series, the campaign revolves around two clans, the Streets and the Sharps. In the demo though, you can only really get as far as selecting which one you want to join, so I'll hold off on my thoughts on the clans and the further campaign until I've played the full game. The demo only really teases the story. So the races were a little bit disappointing, however that's not where the online ends. There are of course random players driving the streets in free roam, and you can invite your friends. However, I did try to get Stig connected to a game, but after nearly an hour of failed attempts, neither of us knew what to try, so we ended up asking about it. Only to find that in the demo you can't connect different regions. Fair enough, it's not the full game, but there was nothing that kind of told us this. Anyway, at this point Stig tried changing his region, so that we were in the same one, and we tried again, and it seemed like we were connected. However, the in-game chat only seemingly worked one way, and we still couldn't see each other, so at this point we kind of gave up with that. To be fair, this is of course pre-launch, and games as big as Forza have connection issues after launch. I just really hope that things are better in the full game, and that we can play with people around the world, not just in singular regions, which I'm assuming will be the case in the full game, but nothing's kind of been said about that. There is also the elephant in the room, of course, of it being an online-only game, and with the death of the crew recently, the awareness of the issues this poses to the game in the future has risen massively. We really don't want to see this game completely gone, just 10 years after its release. Throughout this video, you are of course seeing for yourself what this game looks like, although with YouTube compression, and mostly I think it's pretty good. It's not outstanding, it's not the best looking game in the world, but it holds up pretty well in a world full of games from much larger studios. There are though a few issues. Firstly, and I know I go on about this a lot in games, there is an annoying ghosting effect just below the car, kind of in its shadow, I think due to the anti-aliasing settings. However, no setting appeared to change how this looked. To be fair, this problem seems to plague all modern racing games somewhat. It's particularly noticeable in Motorfest, for example. I'm not really sure why. I'm sure in older games it never used to be, but it seems to be problems with this sort of thing in almost everything now. The best solution I could find was to re-enable motion blur, which I had previously turned off, because I usually do that in games, but to be honest, this probably just blurs the problem more than actually solving it. But it looks better than not doing that. There doesn't at times appear to be enough of a shadow beneath cars. At least I think that's what it is. They somehow don't look like they're sitting on the road properly, although they are on the road. I noticed this particularly in photo mode. It's not that there isn't a shadow, or that they're not sitting on the ground, it just doesn't seem dark enough or strong enough, or it's kind of hard to pinpoint what looks off, but something kind of isn't quite right with how the car looks like it is, if that makes sense. I'm not really sure, bit of an odd one. That's it for visuals, but the sounds in this were particularly impressive. Everything sounds unique, which makes every vehicle feel that bit more special. I particularly like the startup sounds in the garage before you head on out. I absolutely love starting up this DB11 in the garage and driving out from the hotel. It's a similar story with the physics and handling. They are decent, but not perfect. I think they come across worse on video than they actually feel to drive because of the camera movement. It doesn't kind of look quite right. But in terms of feeling, I think it's pretty good. These things can be a bit subjective, but to me they feel more intuitive to use and fun to drive with than games like Motorfest and Need for Speed. I know they're supposed to be far more arcadey than this is, but yeah, it didn't feel as natural to drive with as games like Forza Horizon. I know that's kind of the standard for open world car physics and handling. Remember though, this is from a much smaller studio than Forza, and to be fair, I am a lot more used to the feel of that game, so this I feel like maybe just took a bit of getting used to. In this game, the back of the car seemed to step out a bit uncontrollably at times, but as time went by with the demo, I got a lot more used to it, and in fact, the challenge of trying to kind of hold the car when it started to slide without losing control was quite fun. It's not necessarily easy to do, but it kind of felt good when you got it right. It definitely feels... you can feel what's going on, it's just sometimes hard to catch a car if it starts to go, which is probably, to be honest, how it should be. Also, the difference in grip in the rain is a lot more noticeable than in most open world games, and each car had a very unique feel to it, a bit like they all had their unique sounds. But as I didn't have loads of time on the demo, I feel like I would need to have a bit more time getting used to the physics and handling to truly give my thoughts on it. So we'll wait for the full game to kind of give a full breakdown of how everything feels, but I think the fundamentals of it so far are pretty good. Now let's talk about arguably the most important part of a car game, the cars. We were supposed to, according to the advertising for the demo, be able to buy 16 cars and test drive a further 11 of them, spread across 7 dealerships. As far as I can tell though, there were only 6 dealerships that we could access, and there were only 24 vehicles rather than 27. I couldn't, for example, see the Porsche 918, Koenigsegg Agera, or Ferrari 812 Superfast from this list anywhere. We were, however, able to purchase the Aston Martin DB11, as opposed to just being able to take it for a test drive, which was a lovely surprise that I'm super happy about. I was only able to earn enough credits during this to purchase 3 cars during the demo. One of them was that rather expensive Aston, which might explain why I didn't have enough to buy much else. The 24 cars that we did have access to, though, were also a greatly varied selection, which I did very much enjoy testing, and although I couldn't buy that many of them, I did take the time to test drive everything in this demo, which I will be showing off and talking about in another video soon. The Solar Hotel, with its large apartments, and now with the introduction of the garages over in the lobby, feels more and more like an acceptable substitute for the houses of Test Drive Unlimited 2. Yes, it's not quite the same, but it has a large living space and a garage, so it more or less replicates the function and feel of those houses anyway. I really hope actually that the size of the garage and number of spaces increases as we upgrade our apartments, which change as we progress through the game. Although the cosmetic clinic and clothes shop being inside the hotel rather than at their own locations is a bit of a shame, the most important part, the car dealerships, are still their own separate spaces. These perfectly bring that test drive car purchase experience back to this latest game. From looking around to speccing your cars in real life paint colours, trim and wheels, to being handed the keys and leaving in your brand new acquisition. It really does give a great sense of ownership to every car that you collect during your time with the game. And finally, here are a few other tiny things that I noticed during the demo. For some reason, the Ford F-150 traffic cars have their suspension slammed to the ground and make dreadful tyre squealing noises for no reason sometimes. Several times I also came around a corner to find a traffic vehicle being hurled in my face from the sky, or to find a breakdancing van or taxi in the middle of the road. The kind of wheel to select different car functions I found particularly fiddly and annoying. Using the indicators was fine because it was straight to the left or to the right with the joystick, as were the options towards straight up and straight down. But the ones kind of in between there on the wheel of functions I found incredibly annoying because the wheel kept kind of closing and it would kind of slip to a different option to the one I was trying to select, and you'd end up doing the wrong thing, which I could kind of do if I was stationary, but whilst driving it was really fiddly to kind of get it to do what I wanted it to do. If I'm being particularly picky, the nighttime in this game feels a bit too long. And another thing I noticed was there was a building with superimposed writing on it, a bit like all the dealerships, workshops and clans and all the kind of things you can visit have. So I'm pretty sure nothing further has been fully confirmed so far, so it will be interesting to see if that building turns out to be a location we can visit or not. That, though, is going to be all for my thoughts on the recent Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown demo after my kind of slightly limited experience of it. Overall, it was a positive experience. I enjoyed my time on the demo and only wish I could have spent longer on there, mostly to save for and purchase more of the available vehicles, because I did in fact reach the maximum level possible. The campaign itself is hard to judge, because the start is kept secret and we can only play a certain amount of it. The races seem a little bit repetitive and never filled with any actual players. The online is limited and my experience with it wasn't great, not to mention the online-only situation. The graphics I think hold up reasonably well, and the car sound I found particularly impressive. I feel like the Solar Hotel, now that it has garages too, is more and more of a decent substitute to actually having houses in the game, but it would still be great to see them added in the future. The garage was a really great surprise, and the test drive car purchasing experience is still very much there in the different dealerships. This game is by no means perfect, and it has some way to go, I think, before release, but the fundamentals are there. Let's just hope they can kind of perfect it before then, because overall it was a fun experience, and in the end that is what matters with a game. Do though let me know your thoughts on the Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown demo from what you've seen or played. Will you be pre-ordering this game? For now though, that is going to be all, so thank you very much for watching, and I will be back with the next one very soon.